we're going to discuss many subjects in regards to after passing. Some of them have a lot of practical halachot. Here's an example. Someone lost his wife. When is the earliest time he can get married? Does that mean immediately, 30 days, 3 festivals, etc.? But first, we're going to the head of community Act of Mourning. So we are on page 22, 3 lines from the bottom of the page. Tanu Rabbanan. Sages teach us, that's from Tractate Moed chapter 10. Chacham shemet, if is a sage passed away, meaning the head of the community, as you see, as following of yesterday's study, we have a level of gradation, meaning head of the community, the scholar of the community, etc. Chacham shemet beit midrasho batel. So they explain to us in the code Yored Ashin Memdalet that it's an act of devastation for losing a great Torah scholar. So we total occupied ourselves with act of mourning. So there's a lot to learn with that. Number one, Rashi explained to us in Kitvei Yad, he said that this applies not to the entire yeshiva world, but to the students who study specifically from that scholar. The Rambam elaborates and he said they should focus their time, dedication in his memory. But the others said that that's not the entire 7 days, it's just for the time of burial. Now, the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher, said that that's not only the 7 days, is the idea that they should not lo lehit atzel, they should not be lazy of giving proper eulogy for the entire week of mourning. The Ritva explains that he said it doesn't mean that people should waste their time in vanity instead of study, but the Beit HaMidrash, the yeshiva, the house of study that they used to, it's a desolate, and instead they study in pair, Yilmedu Zugot, they study in pair at home, and he said leharot hachesaron, in order to show the loss of him. Now the Prisha in Yoredea said that it's not only specifically for those students, but anyone who study from him at least dedicate the first day to his memory. It reminds me the passing of the late Rav Eliashiv or Rav Ovadia Yosef in Israel. They have so many people involved because he built so many houses of studies. So again, that's the question here, how long and how much you do that. Av Bedin Shemet, head of rabbinic court that passed, Kol Batei Midrashot Shebe'iro Betelin. Everyone is occupied with the mourning and all the house of studies closed. V'nichnasim lebeit HaKnesset. So in those days it was 2 separate entities. One it was synagogue, shul, Beit HaKnesset, and one it was Beit HaMidrash, the place of study. So they all go there morning and evening. Umeshanin et mekoman. If you see a mourner, they move to a different location in synagogue. Yishvim batzafon, yishvim badarom, yishvim badarom, yishvim batzafon. So they want to show that they miss him. So they want to show that it's all mixed up. That without him there is lack of order. It's some type of chaos. It's an expression. And Nasi Shemet, if it's the head of the community, Nasi, it's like the president. Batem Midrashot Kulan, everyone closed. Some say that only those who abide by him. בטלים ובתי הכנסת ובני הכנסת נכנסים לבית הכנסת. So as you see here that Nahara Upashte, every community have their own minhag, and you see a tremendous diverse of minhagim. You see Rosh and Ravid and Rambam and so many others that say that there are so many minhagim. How basically you treat it is just one day, it's full 7 days. It's everyone in the community or those people who just study from him. Is applies also to the act of as a mourners or not. So in short, the way it's written here, they move from the permanent house of study to the place of worship, Beit HaKnesset, and over there they dedicates a lot of talk in memory of his teaching, etc. 23, Vekorim Shiva. So Rashi said, Besefer Torah, they call for 7 aliyot, the Ein Mitpalelim, this is applied for Shabbat, the Ein Mitpalelim Yachad Beit HaKnesset, אלא כל ואחד ואחד מתפלל בביתו. So everyone daven, pray in his home. So when it's come to a Torah reading, they need to have the quorum, so they get together in the synagogue. The Ramban said, no, it means that they go to the house of mourners. It's a big question here, is the Rosh have a lot of writings, what exactly meaning of mourning on Shabbat. We basically not allowed to have Avelud beparesia, we don't mourn on Shabbat. So how they do that? Anyway, Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha אומר לא שילכו ויתעלו בשוק אלא יושבים ודומים. Says, come on, it doesn't mean that these people they stroll afterward in the marketplace and they just waste their time in vanity. That's not what we meant. We meant to say that they just get together and being silent as an act of mourning. There are some who said Yoshvim Vedavim. So it means it's not a vacation day. It's the Gesher HaChaim, the Rabbi Tukuchinsky book, The Bridge of Life. He said that in the Sephardi community, they go to the house of mourners and pray there. In the Ashkenazim, the mourner come to the synagogue. But anyway, ve'en omrim shmu'a, they don't say mesamchei lev, they don't say halacha or agada, meaning homiletic teaching, bebeit ha'avel. So, meaning we don't speak divrei Torah, you keep quiet because it's a time of reflections, a time of sadness, and the Torah it's uplifted the person's heart. אמרו עליו רבי חנניה בן גמליאל שהיה אומר שמועה ואגדה בבית האבל. So we see here that the Rabbi Hanania ben Gamliel allowed to do it. So he lived in the land of Judah, and they said that he have that tradition, but we don't follow that way. We go by the first view. They said in the book of Job that that's the time that he displayed equanimity at the time of sadness. Tanu Rabbanan. אבל שבת ראשונה אינו יוצא מפתח ביתו. The mourner, the first week, he is not leaving his home. We're not in a practical halachot yet, but the idea is he's not going to pray, he's not going to study Torah, because that's an act of gladness. So it means that he is not belittle the severe punishment that Hashem may reflect on him. That's the Yotzar Gonim. And also the Ramat Hadeshen say that he should not forget his state of mourning. However, they say that if they need him, for example, he is the Torah reader and he is the professional, the expert in that, so he can leave. And there is a big discussion what exactly Dvar Mitzvah and when he allowed to do it. Some say Davar Avedi can do it, but many hold that it means that he just pray in his house and that's it. ואינו שנייה יוצא, second one he leaves home, ואינו יושב במקומו, he is not in his location. He's going in different locations. You see in many synagogues the mourners go backward in different, sitting in different chair. Nowadays, for 30 days you do that for the other 5 immediate family, and it's parents, you switch your seat for 12 months. Even the Rama said, I don't know where they have this minhag, where they take it from, but you take it since that's the minhag. The Aruch HaShulchan said that each community have their own minhag, but that's a very general one.
Don't they differentiate between Shabbat and daily services? Because the way I understood it was on Shabbat after Shloshim you could sit in your regular place, but on the regular daily services you should sit in a different place.
You mean to say, first of all, here according to the way we understand, it's that's the Rama. He said that you have to differentiate between parents and other.
Right, but this is for parents specifically.
About parents.
For parents,
according to Rama, it's 12 months.
Right, and it's 12 months. The way I understood it was 12 months during regular Shacharit, but on Shabbos you could sit in your regular space after Shloshim.
So
they differentiated between Shabbos and maybe but
the Aruch HaShulchan and the Mordechai, they both said that each community have their own minhag.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Shlishit, the 3rd week, Yoshev במקומו ואינו מדבר. He sits and he is quiet. Revi'it, the 4th one, Areu kechol adam. The 4th one, he is like may sit in the usual place. So what does that mean, Shabbat here? It's a machloket rishonim, it's disputation. What do you mean by saying Shabbat? Shabbat meaning a week or Shabbat meaning Saturday? So Rashi said that they're using the word Shabbat, it's the entire week. The Rishonim said Shabbat meaning Shabbat, Saturday. So as we said, the Rama said that today you just change the place for 12 months and the others is for 30 days. But he said it's not a source for that, it's just minhag Israel. Anyway, רבי יהודה אומר לו, יצטרכו לומר שבת ראשונה לא יצא מפתח ביתו, שהרי הכל נכנסים בביתו לנחמו. אלא השנייה אינו יוצא מפתח ביתו, שלישית יוצא ונושב במקומו, רביעי יושב במקומו ואינו מדבר, חמישית יראו ככל אדם. So here you see it different minhagim between Ashkenazim, Sfaradim, etc. The Rosh bring Rabbeinu Asher bring the minhag Ashkenaz, that he leave on Shabbat. He was the first one who leave the synagogue, and everyone followed him. In Ashkenazic way, as we said, unlike Sfaradim, the mourner go to the synagogue on Shabbat, but he is the first one to leave, and everyone followed him. And the source, he bring Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. He said there that King Solomon built 2 she'arim, 2 gates in the temple. One is for a newly groom, and one is for the mourner and people who are ostracized. And we have a special blessing to each of them. So Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer said we bless the newly groom for the blessing of success for all of their endeavors. And the mourners, we said, Ashochen bebayit ze yenachemchem, the one, the Almighty who dwell in his temple, in this house of worship, will give you a word of comfort. And the same they said for the menudim, for people who are ostracized. Yet, Mishacharav Bet HaMikdash, from the time that the temple is no longer in existence, at least at the time being, so he says, it's good for people to do act of kindness. So that's the reason, the source for Ashkenazic minhag, to have the mourner go to the synagogue and then he leave first and everyone followed him. Sfaradim, as we said, does that at home and they have minyan at their own house. Tanu Rabbanan, Kol 30 yom lanisuim, the 30 days in regards to marriage, that you can married before someone lost his wife. So this is in the level of gradation 2, as you remember, because the 1 is the parents, and now it's a spouse. So the question is, how long is that applied? So they said here, kol 30 yom, in a 30 days period of mourning, is prohibited for a person to marry. So he needs to wait, to be patient, Gilbert, wait 30 days. All right? So that's one school of thought. Meta ishto. So first stage is not wife, is just if he's a mourner. If he's a mourner and it was scheduled for wedding, you need to wait. Remember, that's not a practical halachot. It's a matter of fact that my sister, Dvora, her husband, he was is a Torah scholar and a pious man. He lost his mother several days before, I think a week, if I'm not mistaken, before they got married. So, if I'm not mistaken, they got married a week or 10 days, I don't remember the exact days, but it was a very short time after his mother passed. It was sudden passing. So, that's one category. Meta ishto, if the spouse passed away. So what we said so far, 30 days periods, so far we understand for parents, that's one view. But the spouse, אסור לישא אישה אחרת עד שיעברו 3 רגלים. So if he lost his spouse, he needs to wait 3 festivals. How long is the 3 festivals? 3 festivals.
Well, it could be 6 months.
Could be 6 months, could be more.
It could be up to a year.
Up to a year.
Yep.
So Rashi in כתבי יד said, שמראה כאילו אינו חושש במיתת אשתו. He said it's like a person's changing socks. So that's what he said. Eddie, why are you looking at me? I'm reading what it's written here. I'm not making up stories. So the Tosfot said here, עד שיעברו 3 רגלים. So it's the 3 explanation in the Tosfot.
I hope they change your socks more often than that. But
I didn't make it up.
Yeah, coming from a sock person.
Right? Tosfot have here 3 different explanations. And I give you an advanced idea that one contradicted the others. So let's see the 3. Tosfot said, number 1, עד שיהיו 3 רגלים בלא שמחה, ולא ישכח אהבת אשתו. He said, Tosfot said, guess what? He needs to pass 3 festivals of being lonely. You hear that? Mm-hmm. Okay, 3 festivals of being lonely. So what happened to him? He's lonely in Pesach, he's lonely in Shavuot, he's lonely in Sukkot. He feels so lonely, right? And then, velo yishkach ahavat ishto, and the love for his late spouse is in his heart. He will not forget it quickly.
He won't let it go.
Not let it go quickly. It takes 3 festivals for him to get over the loss of his spouse. That's one
the whole
avenue.
time you're thinking.
I'm still having a hard time with someone who's lost their parents because.
What do you mean, 30 days?
If you know, for a year, if you lose your parents for a year, you're not allowed to go to a wedding celebration, to someone else's wedding celebration.
No, so what's the problem?
So surely you shouldn't you shouldn't have your own wedding celebration then.
Whoa.
I mean. Okay.
Let me share with you what they said. You're jumping first because.
Okay, no, go. Then wait. We'll wait until we get there.
I'll tell you just to know. There is a concept in halacha that's called pruvu. We are commanded by the Torah to be fruitful and multiply. Mm-hmm. God created the world not for us to be selfish for ourselves, but to occupy the world and fruitful and multiply. In general, the minimum is, if it's possible, if a person can, she will have son and daughter, etc. That's the way it should be. There is another concept, we studied it in the past, I don't know if you remember. It's written, "Ba'erev tizra zaracha u'baboker alfana." So it means that even a person is in advanced age, for 2 reasons, is still commanded to get married. 1, if he still have the capability to have children, he should do that. 2, Hashem created the world for us to love life and enjoy life. And it's not good, as we said in Genesis, Lo tov heyot ha'adam levado. It's not good for a person to be lonely. So therefore, for all saying so, as much as a person act of mourning, in our simple language is like the parents said, I want you to be happy. That's normal parents, right? So therefore, they are for, it's not taking away the lost by getting married. Okay? Now, Tosfot said one avenue when it's come to spouse, which is a different story. Right. He said that you have to eat 3 pilgrims, but that's one way. Now we're going to the other direction. Ina made the second explanation, כדי שיישא אחרת ולא יזכו מן הראשונה, שלא יהיה שתי דעות במיטה. Now second avenue, the Tosfot, he goes the other. He says, do it quickly, get married the second one, so you'll forget the first one quickly, right, Eddie? So he said, he used the word that it should not be, how do you translate it? I don't know how to translate it, but basically they said it should not be two views. I just translated the way it's written, 2 views in the bed. I don't know what exactly to translate that word. And then they said the third one, he said, ועוד פן יזכירנה אהבת אשתו לקנטרה. He said the third one is, the fear is that the second wife, he will be mean to her in a sense that he always reflect upon the first one. And it's like compare them all the time. So you see here 3 different avenues. One said that it's better for him to focus on the sadness and the 3 festivals and get over that. And the other second and the third view is the other way around, that he should. But the third explanation, the way that he said it later, is the idea that it's good for him to feel lonely for 3 festivals, and then he miss being with his wife, and then you look at me like I don't making up anything.
No, it sounds good. It sounds good. That's a wise idea.
The option. I think there's not set, so that people are different and they can fall into whatever one would suit them better.
Right.
It says here that the extended period is necessary so that his memory of his first wife will recede, and he will thus not think about her during conjugal relations with his new wife.
That's what I said, second explanation of Tosfot.
That was a Tosfot one. Then the passage of 3 festivals with their attendant joy helps one to forget the first wife sufficiently for him to remarry. So it's the joy of the festivals, the celebration of the festivals that helps to...
As Kat said, that there are many views.
Right.
It's individual, there's many.
Yep.
Anyway.
That was...
Rabbi Yehuda Omer.
That was Rav Yechio Mipari.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, רגל ראשון ושני אסור, שלישי מותר. He says the first 2 festivals you shouldn't marry, the third one you allow. So it's either because some say that you go by Rabbi Yehuda because he's the lenient one, but there are Meiri and others that follow Tanakama that said 3 festivals. So the Rama said the person should be sensitive over that. You don't want to hurt the person's feeling. You want one of the things that it's. I never forget. One time I went to Long Island, New York, and I saw a lady that wants to get married, etc. And she was not successful. She tried. She was not successful. So one time we went to her house, and I commented and I said to her, she had in the dining room a huge portrait of her late husband, and half of the conversation is about him. So I said, how in the world are you expecting a normal person in the right mind to enter into your life? You know, it's like, it's hard, right? Sure. I know people that they have all over the house pictures of the deceased. So people don't like it. People don't want to enter into relationships while there is so much memories and so much past and so much things involved, right? Anyway, so that's the idea. The Rama said the person should be sensitive. V'im ein lo banim, so if at least the Rif said he should have one son and one daughter, so meaning he did not fulfill the mitzvah of fruitful and multiply, mutar lisa lealtar mishum bitul priya uviya. So if it's a situation you have no children, so he's permitted to marry another wife immediately due to the need not to neglect the mitzvah of fruitful and multiply. Okay? It's a big question, what does that mean immediately? It's a dispute among the rabbis. What do you mean by saying immediately? Henicha lo banim ktanim, God forbid. She passed and she left for him little children. For example, in the Torah, in the book of Esther, right? She was an orphan. She lost parents. She lost father and mother. Father passed when the mother was pregnant, and then the mother delivered her and passed. So Mordechai adopted her, her uncle. So a situation like that. Or here, if the wife left him young children, mutar lisa lealtar mipnei parnasatan. So you're allowed to get married. I know a guy, no names. He came here one time with his 6 kids for months in New York. And those of you who are old-timer know what I'm talking about. And his wife, I don't know, it's a mental or whatever it is, one day disappeared. Went to Florida and disappeared. And she left him 5 or 6 kids. So the community arranged a young lady from the community who was like 15 years younger than him or more maybe, to help him out with the little children. And a year later they got married. Anyway, it happens. So here they said if it's little children, then you're allowed to marry right away.
But can he get married if she just left and they don't know if she alive or dead?
No. Here in that sugya we talk about her passing. Over there she disappeared and eventually they divorced her.
Okay.
But in my little understanding it was a mental case. Anyway, right. She left him 5 or 6 kids, very, very young. Anyway, so in a situation like that, so he can go ahead and marry in order to have someone to raise them. He needs to go out to work, he needs to do things, cannot stuck in a house with the little children. Right? מעשה שמתה אשתו של יוסף הכהן. Here is the story of the well-known priest. His name is Yosef. That this story, according to Gemara in Zvachim, page 100, basically was eve of Pesach, and she passed away. ואמרה לאחותה בבית הקברות, so he said to her sister at the funeral, at the cemetery, לכי ופרנסי את בני אחותך, which means I'm going to marry you. That's her sister. He said to her sister in a cemetery, right? ואף על פי כן לא בא אליה לזמן מרובה. And even though he married her, he was in a waiting period. So some said it was like 30 days afterward. מהי זמן מרובה? מה זמן מרובה? אמר רב פאפא לאחר 30. It's a big question, what does that mean, 30 days? But the way that the rabbi said here, that he was extra careful not to enter the personal relationships before 30 days period. But the Ramban said it's a big question if that's a practical halacha, if that's an obligation. Some said, as the Rambam said, that you can marry right away, even doing the Shiva. But as far as the relation, you have to wait for 30 days. That's the Rambam. The Radvaz said it's not so simple. He said that it should wait. So how we wrap up what we understand so far. There is a concept that's called le'altar, which means immediately. The rabbis are very sensitive with that. They don't want to hurt people's feeling, but they want to be pragmatic in a sense. There are exceptions. So you can go strict and said, wait for 3 festivals. But there are situations you said you can go immediately. When? Number 1, if he has no children. Number 2, if she left him a little children. Tosfot said only after the Shiva. Tosfot asked, how about Yosef, the story of the Kohen? So he said, miyad is not necessarily immediately. But the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher bring in the Ravid, and he said, the key point of marriage is be fruitful and multiply. So here the question is, so what's the purpose of this? So the Ravad said 30 days period, not because of fruitful and multiply, but because the person la'erev al tanach et yadcha. And the Ritva challenged that. The Rambam said there is a feeling which it's called shelo yikachena acher. So it's like a feeling that he wants to marry that one, and he wants to make sure to secure that she will be his wife. So that's the idea. So you can marry her, but you cannot have relation with her until a certain period of time.
Do they differentiate between Nisuin and Kedushin?
In those days it was, but here we talk about Nisuim without Bia, without physical relation.
But I mean that's Nisuin. Marry
her to make sure that she's.
But that's what Nisuin is, right? Nisuin, you before you consummate the marriage, which is after.
Yes, but there are different avenues to do it. For example, you have the contract, the Ketubah.
Right, which is done.
But the idea here, the wrap it all, the idea is that the Rambam all that he should feel secure that she is his wife.
So that means perform both?
No, as far as the relationship, he have a waiting period.
So then just Nisuim and then.
Just Nisuim. Tanu Rabbanan. Kol 30 yom, now we talk about another aspect, which is using certain laundry, so it's called giyutz, ironing garments. So that's again act of pleasant. Kol 30 yom legihutz, which means the mourner should wait 30 days period for ironing his garments. And it's a big question if it's applied just for himself or also by others, for others or by others. That's the Rambam and the Ravid. Echad kelim chadashim, regardless if it's a new garment, ve'echad kelim yeshanim hayotzim mitoch hamachbesh, or the old that come out of the press as iron garments appear to be new. As you know, that can be. So both of them prohibited, regardless if it's a brand new or it's used but looks like new. Rabbi Omer, lo asru ela kalim chadashim milvad. He said, no, this prohibition applies only to purchase a new one. But when it's used, that you do ironing, it's fine. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon Omer, lo asru ela kalim chadashim levanim bilvad. He said that they prohibited wearing only new white garments. So, and the Rambam said that that's basically the halacha. We have to differentiate between white and non-white. Abai nafik begarda de sarbela. Abaye went out and he was mourning for in an old white garment. Kirabi. Rav nafik bechimus taromita sumak tachaleti. Rabbi Lazar bar Shimon. He went with a new one. It's a new red Roman cloak because he followed Rabbi Lazar bar Shimon that applies only the white one. So here you see the difference between gihutz and levisha. Gihutz meaning that you make the ironing of the garments, but here they see difference between kibus, which is only water, and gehutz, that is water and some detergent. So the Ritva brings two views. What's exactly the measurement, ma shiur, when it's come to father or mother? So he said it's come to ironing is 30 days. Or there are those who said that shigaru bo chaverav, until his friend said, look, you don't look right, so he needs to change. It's another question which, again, we don't have much time for that, is greeting. greeting mourners. So the Rama said that we should not. But then he come to conclusion that people who are not educated, it can create unnecessary animosity. Because people who are not educated, they're ignorant, you don't greet them, they interpret it as an insult. So the same manner is a question, should you shake hand with the mourner, you should greet them, you should say hello to them, instead of how do you treat them, since he is in a tremendous state of agony. I remember the Mishnah in Avot said, Al tenachameu, you should not give a comfort, b'sha'ah shemeto mutar lefanav. A person lost his loved one, the body lay before him, you should not give a word of comfort at that time. So therefore, it's a question. So in a practical halachot, when we should not do it, but if the people are not educated and they misconstrue it and they think it is an insult, so you have no choice. Anyway, because the sages say that Shabbat counts as one of the day of mourning, but does not interrupt the mourning period, which continues after Shabbat. So meaning that a person buried, let's say, Wednesday or Thursday, so for the 7 days period, Shabbat, the Saturday, is one of the days that we count, even physically we not mourn, at least not outside, not publicly. Ben Yehuda u'bnei Glila, Hane Amri, Bnei Yehuda, the people, the residents of Galilee, said, 23b, Yesh Avelut b'Shabbat. So there is those who say that mourning rites to be observed, there is some school of thought that said that you can do it on Shabbat, and the other said you should not mourn on Shabbat. So what does that mean? So the question is, there is one concept, it's called beparhesia, something that is public, outside people see, and betzin'ah, what do you do at home? In general, everyone agrees that Shabbat supersede all the others, override. So therefore, when it's come to Shabbat, you don't mourn. The big question is, what should you behave in your own home? An example, relation between husband and wife. So there are the school of thought that said, you're allowed to do it, and others said, no, you're not doing the Shiva. The one who said that you mourn on Shabbat is the reason because it's count, one of the 7. One who said not, it's not. So I explained my book, Rashi here said, Rashi said, is a problem here. Pick and choose. If you're talking about Shabbat, you meant to say that Shabbat is in one hand counted as one of the 7 days. By the same token, you said that on Shabbat you don't mourn. So what exactly you meant by using the word eina mafseket? It's not stop. So he said, since there is a view that the person in private still mourn on Shabbat, so therefore we understand how consecutively you count the 7 days period, and that's what I think Rashi meant in the Klomar, and I elaborate in my book. You're welcome to read. Next, ve'ela ha-ketane ola. So what does that mean that it's count? So we need to understand something that the rabbis elaborates, and they said we have to differentiate between festivals and Shabbat. Festival, we are commended to be in a state of happiness. So the moment you are sorrow, you are sad, etc., is the opposite to the act of mourning, act of celebration, and therefore festival is not count in those days of mourning. Versus Shabbat, that it's different story. Why Shabbat is different story? As we said, we count and we don't count. We count as far as the days, but we don't count that there is school of thought that in private a person should observe the 7 days period, in a sense not using hot water, in a sense of relation, etc. Aide. So, והאל הקטני עולה, איידה דקבל למיתנה סייפה אינן עולים, תעני רישה עולה. So they said, because since the Mishnah wishes to teach that the latter clause, that the days of fast do not count to the requisite days of mourning, it taught also in the first clause that the Shabbat count as one of the days of mourning, although no mourning rites are practiced, and I didn't explain that it's not total correct. There is this concept of betzina, not private. The Gesher HaChaim, the Bridge of Life, from Rabbi Tukuchinsky, elaborates what exactly you reconcile the conflict between the joys of Shabbat and the act of mourning. I told you, I think yesterday, the story of the Piasetzner Rebbe, that during the Simchas Torah, the dance and celebrate, when it's over, he mourned. That's the way it is. There is a view about King David. He said that he mourned for a long time over when his son was very ill, and then when he heard that he passed, he went in the shower. And there's a few explanations why he did it. But one of the idea is that because when they change the status, he can no longer help the situation, and it's over, it's over. Anyway, for those who hold the school of thought that there is a concept of mourning on Shabbat, we just said that it does not interrupt the mourning period, which would have been unnecessary to say if the mourning rites are practiced on it. So the Gemara said, Mishum dekable mitna and seifa mafsikim tanara sheina mafseket. So because we want to say in the later clause that the festival interrupt the mourning, he told also that the first clause that Shabbat does not interrupt it. Lema ketanai. Do you say that the disputation between Bnei Yehuda and Bnei Galil, it's in the disputation of Tanaic disputation. If someone has the loved one who passed away, mutal lefanav, meaning can be physical, that you have the deceased at the front of you, or mutal lefanav, it means that you are obligated to take care of all the funeral arrangements. So, and who are they? Any one of the seven. Any one of the seven, father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, or spouse. Okay? So, in between, we call that temporary situation, what it's called? Onen. Remember, we have a different status. One, when a person is very sick and about to die, it's goses. It's soon to be dead. Then, the moment the doctor determines that he's no longer among the living, that period of time by halacha until the burial, it's called onen. It's a different rules, different halachot. And then we enter the new domain that it's after burial. Okay, so he said at that time, which is the time that the person lost his loved one, but he or she is not buried yet. Ochel bebait acher, meaning he's obligated to eat in a different location, not in the same spot as the deceased. Why? So the Gemara in Brachot 18 said there is a concept from the book of Mishlei, Proverbs chapter 17, Lo'eg larash. Gilbert, you remember we talk about tzitzit in a cemetery, and we said that you put the tzitzit in your, why? Because it's Lo'eg larash. You don't make fun of the deceased. They cannot perform this mitzvah. In our anthropomorphic language, is like the deceased have eyes and feeling and ears, etc. So in our faith, it's a belief that we bury them, but the spirit, the soul is alive. So therefore, you don't mock them by eating at the same room. You have the body of the deceased. You go to a different location. If you don't have location, go to your friend's house. You need to make a partition, if there's no other location, partition of 10 handbreadth between him and the deceased, and then אין לו דבר לעשות מחיצה, if he have no means to make a petition of 10 handbreds, מחזיר פניו ואוכל, he turn around his face and he eats. So again, it's only by force of circumstance. ואינו מסב ואוכל, is not like the way that he used to eat in those days. You lean on the ground and you enjoy the meal while you are left, like in Pesach, reclining. ואינו אוכל בשר ואינו שותה יין. You don't eat meat, you don't drink wine. The reason is because you have act of joy and you forget the mourning over the deceased. ואין מברך, he is exempt from the amotzi, he is exempt for the blessings. There is a disputation if you need to do a hand wash or not, because he is onen. Onen is exempt from all the mitzvot. ואין מברך, ואין מזמן, doesn't need to do a zimun after the meal, ואין מברכים עליו, ואין מזמנים עליו. And what else? הוא פטור מקריאת שמע, is exempt from reciting the Shema. ומן התפילה is exempt from the prayer. ומן התפילין, from wearing tefillin. ומכל מצוות האמורות בתורה. All the positive commandments in the Torah. Why we use those examples? Because that's more stringent mitzvot, mitzvot chamurot. You're accepting the yoke of heaven upon you. So for sure, from that you understand that he is exempt from others. Ube Shabbat, if you cannot bear it because it's Shabbat, what do? מייסב ואוכל, ואוכל בשר ושותה יין ומברך ומזמן ומברכים ומזמנים לאבחר בקריאת שמע ובתפילה ובתפילין בכל מצוות האמורות בתורה. You're allowed to do all the mitzvot on Shabbat. So the tefillin is, according to some commentators, a mistake. Should not be here. Anyway, רבן גמליאל אומר, מתוך שנתחייב באלו, נתחייב בכולם. So he's obligated for all. Rabbi Yochanan Tashmit Shemitah Ika Benayu. The difference is when it's come to a sexual relation. So according to Rabbi Gamliel, the acute mourner is obligated in the mitzvah of engaging in marital intercourse with his wife on Shabbat, just as he's obligated to for all the other mitzvot. Anyway, my love be'aka mifligei. The Mar Savar yesh avelut b'Shabbat, so therefore he's exempt from the mitzvah of relation. Umar Savar en avelut b'Shabbat. So therefore he have that mitzvah. Mimai, how do you compare between the two? Dilma atkan lo kamar tana kamela mishun dementor mutar lefanav alachad dementor mutar lefanav lo. We have to differentiate between if the deceased is in front of him or not. V'atkan lo kamar rabban gamliel atam medakat lo chal avelut alei. Why? Because he's onen, he's not yet a mourner. But here, that is in effect that the halachot of mourning have already taken effect. He may also prohibit this sexual relation. So to wrap it up, you see that the question is when it's come to onen. Onen again is a period between the passing to burial. If you allow or not allow the sexual relation. So that's based on the different views when it's come to washing, haircut, etc. Is there three views that Yehuda and Shimon Aleph brought, the two. Number one is that the mourner apply only upon completion of burial, and therefore the onen allowed with everything because he is not yet a mourner. So that's one view. There are others who said no, it applies all these halachot from the time of passing, excluding taking off shoes and things like that. That's a Ramban. There is a view that said that all of that applies only after burial, but when it's come to meat and wine, he cannot do that. And the same as relation, because it's called kalut rosh, that he belittle or he will not focus on the mourning. That's the Tosfot. Practical halacha. We said that we rules that the onen is prohibited from the relation, regardless if it's during the week or Shabbat, and also he is prohibited for things that not allowed in private. But the Tur and the Code have a lot to say on that, so let's go to practical halachot. Yoredea, code 378. Ein omrim shmua. When you go to the house of mourners, you don't refer to halachot, etc. Shavua rishon vesheni, the first week of mourning, a mourner may not leave his house, even to attend a wedding or brit ceremony. Some are lenient and permit him to go out at night if there is a serious reason. The prohibition against leaving the house applies only if one goes to stroll or to engage in business. However, if he goes in order to of the ruler or in order to a case of great needs, is permitted to leave, and it's that's the common practice. That's the Rama. Again, more than that is the code in Yoredea 393. Nisuim shel avel. It is prohibited for a mourner to remarry during the 30 days mourning period. After 30 days, he may marry and have a wedding feast, even if he is mourning for his father or mother. Some say, that's the code Yoredea 392, that one may even betroth a woman on a day of the death itself, as long as he does not prepare a feast. However, others say that the mourner may not betroth a woman within 30 days, and this is the accepted opinion. That's the Rama. It is permitted to arrange a marriage within 30 days. Nisuim lachar mot ishto. If a man's wife dies, then he is not permitted to remarry until 3 festivals have passed. The 8th day of the assembly is considered its own festival in that regard. Similarly, some say that Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are also considered to be festivals for this purpose. However, others disagree. That's Aruch HaShulchan. If one has not yet fulfilled the mitzvah to procreate, or if he has young children, or if he needs someone to care for him, then he may betroth a woman immediately and marry her after 7 days. However, some say that betrothing is also prohibited until the initial 7 days of mourning have passed, thus the shach. In such a case, he should not engage in sexual relations with his second wife until the 30 days prior to of mourning has concluded, unless he has not fulfilled the mitzvah of procreation. Some say that even if one is a wealthy and can hire many servants, he may marry before the established time if he is lonely without a wife. It is then considered as if he has no one to care for him. This is the basis for the common practice for people to remarry before the established time. However, one who is able to wait should be strict with himself. That's the Rama. A woman whose husband dies is not required to wait for 3 festivals. Instead, with regard to the laws of mourning, she is permitted to marry even within 30 days. However, she is required to wait 3 months in case she is pregnant in order to determine the father of the child. So that's the common practice. The Shach citing the Rif on Shulchan Aruch Yoredea 392. As far as the mourning on Shabbat, so we said that the early authority disagree with the meaning of this expression. In general, we count the Shabbat, but we don't mourn on Shabbat publicly. The last one, it's Misha Meito Mutar Lefanav. If one's relative has died, but has not yet been buried, then he is referred to as an acute mourner. During this time, he may not eat the same room as the body. Instead, he must eat in a different room. If he does not have another room, he should eat in a house of a friend, etc. So the idea is that it's like Loeg Larash if you have the deceit at the front of you. On Shabbat, the restriction of mourning apply in private, meaning we count the Shabbat as one of the Shiva, one of the 7 days mourning, yet as far as the sitting Shiva, it's not applied to Shabbat. So what do? The way that's written here, it's in private. The Rama said that a mourner is prohibited from engaging in relations, etc., on Shabbat. However, he may not show any public sign of mourning because it's Shabbat. So that's the dynamic here between one hand it's act of joyous of Shabbat, on the other hand you count it as one of the 7 days of the Shiva, and more on that is a code Yoredea 400.
Boyachem leshuloim malachai yeshuloim malachai